Welcome to The Human Thread, a space for those seeking something real in a world dominated by noise and algorithms. I'm Greg, and here we unravel the fabric of authentic connection through creativity, meaningful conversations, and reflections on the messy, beautiful human experience. Let's dive into the threads that bind us beyond likes and follows to meaning, art, and genuine dialogue. In today's episode, I want to speak about why creating space matters in kerning and in life. Now, some of you know that I'm a trained graphic designer. I went to school for graphic design. And while my job now is CEO of a consulting firm, the idea of design, and in particular, my favorite thing about design, typography, is a very important topic. And so I'm very excited to have written this original essay on my Substack, and I want to share some of that copy with you right now. This is entitled Expertly Spaced. Now, typography may seem like a purely visual concern and something reserved for graphic designers like me, but it has huge implications for how we communicate. Kerning, the adjustment of space between characters, is a vital consideration of typographic design. Now, for some of you who are not designers, you may not be familiar with the term kerning. In fact, you might know it as spacing or tracking, but the actual typographic term is called kerning. And proper kerning creates harmony, or at least in my eyes, it creates harmony. Maybe I'm being too dramatic, but proper kerning makes the text easy to read and aesthetically pleasing. But when neglected, it becomes glaringly obvious, leaving a mark of rushed, unrefined work. Now, I've been given a lot of thought, and I really think that, the same principles apply not only to design, but to life. Whether in our work, our relationships, or daily tasks, attention to detail speaks volumes. And the seemingly small spaces between the bigger picture are what hold everything together. When ignored, something just feels off, even to those who aren't trained to notice. And I can't help but think of the busy lives we all lead. Days filled with meetings, weeks filled with obligations. I try my best to keep balance in an overly scheduled life. But the focus of my self-care initiatives tend to be in big blocks. I have a crazy week, I try to take Friday off. Or in the case of what happened to me last night, I arrive home late from a business trip. Well, why don't I sleep in and go into the office the next day a little later? What I've come to realize, though, is while these are good things to continue to prioritize, it's the smaller spaces between them that also matter. When we are not intentional with the in-between, we not only devalue the space, we also devalue the things that we base our schedules around. This difference is subtle, but it is important. Even people without a deep understanding of typography or kerning can sense when something just feels off, especially when things are, quote, auto-kerned. It's not mathematical. Kerning is not a precise mathematical equation that could be programmed into a computer. It is visual, requiring the designer to adjust the spacing by hand and by eye. And each letter, each word, each line of text carries its own unique relationship with the surrounding characters. That is the beauty of typography, and that's why I geek out to it. It's an art form, something that will always need a human touch. And unlike automated processes that rely on standard formulas, kerning demands a designer's expertise, intuition, and understanding of the visual balance between characters. And when we strive to provide that space between our important moments, it just can't be formulaic. It can't be mathematical. When we are intentional about the meetings on our calendar, it cannot just be solved by building 5-minute buffers every hour. Space is about balance. The negative space between characters isn't just a void. It's an integral part of the design. In life, we also rely on these gaps, the pauses in conversation, the silence in a relationship, the moments of reflection in a busy day. And when done right, the pauses feel natural, allowing space for clarity and connection. When done poorly, they create dissonance, making us feel uncomfortable and uneasy. And just as carefully kerned text brings rhythm to words, a life attended to with care brings harmony to our experiences. But unlike the physical process of kerning, which requires intentional action, we can often take the details of life for granted, leaving them to be filled in by automation, default settings, or laziness. The other day, while waiting at the doctor's waiting room, I attempted to leave my phone in my pocket and just stare out the window. Now, maybe I was imagining things, but when I saw the people around me, they looked at me like I was crazy. But, I did it anyway. And I stared out the window and I saw two birds who were either in love with each other or annoying each other on a nearby tree. But isn't that what relationships are like anyway? So this was not some big statement against mobile phone use. Instead, it was an opportunity to take space before my doctor's visit. I had just finished a pretty intense meeting, which I took from my car in the parking lot before walking into the medical center. And that time I took looking at birds instead of doom scrolling or playing a game on my phone created time to decompress. Like an improperly kerned word where the characters are jammed together, failure to provide the necessary space in our lives and relationships can create disorder and stress. And so the negative space should be equal to the positive one. As a graphic design student at Rhode Island School of Design, we often spoke about the power of negative space. In a typography class, we had a project that challenged us to take a letter form, an actual letter character, and crop it in a square in such a way where it was undeniably identifiable as that character. For me, it was the letter G. We actually were asked to use the first letter of our name. And there was the other requirement was that there needed to be a 50-50 visual weight between positive and negative forms. You see, thinking about the space around and between the letters not only creates balance, it also highlights the contour of the positive shape. So consider the differences between a conversation with someone who is truly present, attuned to your words and emotions, and one where the other person is distracted and not fully engaged. I am frequently in these conversations where the other person is clearly only talking. It's as if they are so tightly kerned that they don't want to leave space for another typeface to enter the sentence. You know the ones, where they just, you're convinced that if you don't interrupt them, they'll just keep on talking the whole time. The space between your thoughts, your pauses in conversations, feel jagged, disconnected, and uncomfortable. And it's like speaking to someone with poorly kerned letters, where the connection doesn't flow naturally. Now think about your ability to context shift with focus when your calendar is packed with back-to-back meetings. If you are like me, a much-needed bio break during a back-to-back day of meetings means I rob the end of a meeting or the beginning of the next one. It is the spaces in between that give me time to prep, center my thoughts, decompress, and yes, in some cases, pee. And that enables proper attention and focus. The impact of poor kerning stretches beyond aesthetics. If letters are too close together or too far apart, they can create a sense of confusion. Words become harder to read, forcing the reader to pause and reread and eventually lose the flow of the entire message. And when we neglect those small details, we create miscommunication and misunderstandings. In relationships, failing to listen attentively or give space for others to express themselves can lead to frustration and misconnection. And like that design exercise I had in school, in a great conversation, that positive space is equal in weight to the negative space. These little things can be big things. My family and friends often tease me when I complain about kerning. And by the way, there's plenty of opportunities to see bad kerning in the world. And they find it amusing that I care so much about the spacing between letters. But to me, it's an indicator of something deeper. It's a sign of the designer's level of craft and attention to detail. When kerning is done well, it signals professionalism, care, and dedication to the art. And when it's ignored, it's a red flag. In a world that often values speed over quality, I believe taking the time to perfect the little things, whether in design or in life, is what separates the good from the truly great. Just as proper kerning ensures that text is readable, clear, and beautiful, attention to the smallest details in life fosters stronger connections. It fosters trust, and it fosters success. The spaces between the parts are what make the whole come together seamlessly. And in a world where technology often replaces the need for thoughtful consideration, it's crucial that we still take the time to perfect these details. Because when we neglect the small things, like the spaces between, we risk losing the larger picture. Thanks for joining me on this journey. If today's episode sparked curiosity or resonated with you, let's keep the conversation going on the Human Thread Substack. And until next time, stay curious and keep exploring the human threads that connect us.